let's go right here. Of course, we left the Israelites off last week at the end of chapter 15, and essentially was their first kind of big test that God had given them post-crossing of the Red Sea. Of course, we know they were there in... lost the location. It was on the tip of my tongue and now it's gone. Mara, sorry, and that's where they tested Mara, and of course they had been traveling for several days without any water, and they came to Mara, and the water there was no good, and we had the test there of them murmuring and complaining and the stuff that we saw last week. God fixing the water essentially, using Moses to throw the tree or the stick or whatever in there, and then moving them on down a few miles to essentially what we called an oasis, a resort, plenty of water, plenty of shade, would have been comfortable living there for a while, that he places them in at Elim. And then we finished up, as we saw in verse 27 of chapter 15, that there is no record anywhere of Israel saying thanks to God for, first of all, fixing the bitter water, secondly, putting them to a place where there's plenty of water and plenty of shade. We never see them thanking him for that. Okay? That brings us to chapter 16, and now we're going to be in the desert of Sin, and this is not sin like bad things, this is just a place called Sin, is where it was at. And we would expect at this point for the Israelites, of course, to be understanding that God's going to provide for their needs, right? He's done a ton of stuff now. I mentioned this last week, probably just like the last 3 months in Israel, the Israelite, what they've experienced with the plagues and the crossing of the Red Sea and the water changing over and all these things they've experienced. You would think that at this point, when a problem comes up or a need comes up, they would just think, hey, God will take care of it. Of course, we know that's not the case, and we're going to see that today as we move to our next test, which is the test in the desert of Sin. And I thought it was on here somewhere. I'm trying to find exactly where we're at. I don't know if there's Elam. I don't think it's on here.
Between Elam and Rephidim.
Aha, thank you. Wilderness of Sin. Thank you, Pastor Rob. Right in front of me, the snake would have bit me. So that's where they have located, that's where they're at now. And of course, God provided for them. And we're going to see first 3 verses now. The traveling distance is a little ways, but not a huge space they have crossed over. And it took them from Elam, and you go to verse 1 of chapter 16, and it says, it took their journey from Elam. All the congregation of children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elam and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month, after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. The first need that God allows them to, or God kind of a test of one of their needs was water. The second one we see here in the wilderness of the desert of Sin is the need for what? Sustenance, right? The need for food. So we test them again, the entire congregation, right? This wasn't just a couple of the leaders of the elders of the Israelites, right? It wasn't just a couple of 3 or 4 of the main people who would have been in charge. No. It says that what? All of it. How many people are in this caravan right now? Just give me just a rough estimate. Thousands, maybe millions, right? A lot of people, okay? And how many of them are murmuring? What's it say? All of them, right? So this would have been quite the complaining group of people. Complaining to Moses and Aaron, the whole congregation, that they are hungry. They go as far as we see in the first 3 verses to say that it would have been better if God would have done what to them? Let them die where? In Egypt, right? They're in such a bad mood, and they've murmured so much here, and they've got themselves so worked up that this mob of people is saying that they would have better off in slavery, letting them die there in slavery, where at least they had a little bit of food and had some bread to eat. How silly here are the Israelites to prefer a full belly at the present time over their actual being alive, right? A pretty silly thing to complain about. But it's a testimony to just how much Israel wanted to control God, right? And wanted to move him according to what they wanted, not allowing him to move them according to what he wanted. Okay? They have a strong desire for God to bend to what they want, and have him bend to their dictates. Okay? Obviously, the Israelites have selective memory. Okay? Haley accuses me of having selective memory a lot of times. She asks me to do something, and sometimes it doesn't get done for maybe a couple of days because I forget about it or it comes up or whatever it is. I probably all have instances of selective memory. Israelites definitely have selective memory because they're probably still drinking water in pots that they're carrying on the camels and stuff, right? They've replenished their sources. I'm sure they're probably still drinking the water. And it not takes very long now that the food may be kind of running out, and we see how quickly they've forgotten what God had done for them. They only remembered the last time they had a full belly in Egypt, right? That's what they're going back to, thinking that the last time maybe their belly was completely full in Egypt. They forgot that while in Egypt, they were worked to the point of death, right? Absolute and total exhaustion. They forgot about how unrealistic maybe the demands the Egyptians had put on them, that they had to gather their own straw, make their own bricks, build all these things, and do all this work. Or maybe even forgot the fact that the Egyptians had all of their firstborn babies killed. Forgot about being slaves, apparently. And even more unbelievably than them forgetting all that stuff is how ungrateful they are here to God and considering what He'd just done for them. All the miracles that had wrought them free from their slavery, that they're forgetting all those. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing the affair or the state of Israel's heart. And although Israel's circumstances had changed dramatically, had their hearts really changed any? It hadn't, right? It hadn't at all. The environment was different. They weren't oppressed. They weren't dealing with some of the same things, but their hearts were not changed in the slightest. So we see, first of all, here them complaining. We then see the next part of this, verses 4 down through 15. Of course, God providing them with the solution. Now, God patiently provides the Israelites here with a means for them to have some food. And He patiently provides for them once again. Let's go to verse 4. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. And Moses and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel, At even then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for that He heareth your murmurings against the Lord. And what are we that ye murmur against us? And Moses said, This shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord heareth your murmurings, which ye murmur against Him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses spake unto Aaron, Say unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before the Lord, for He hath heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spake unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in a cloud. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel, speaking to them, saying, At even ye shall eat flesh, and in the morning ye shall be filled with bread, and ye shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay round about the host. And when the dew lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. So God patiently here provides for them, of course, once again. We see him raining down bread, of course, this bread called manna for them to gather up in the morning, and then in the evening, of course, he brings in quail for them to catch and to eat. Now, Moses and Aaron here were careful to point out that, if we go back to verses 7 and 8 of chapter 16, what did they point out on a couple of different occasions? That the complaints were against Moses and Aaron. The complaints were against whom? God, right? And Moses and Aaron are telling them that. You're coming to us and you're bringing us these murmurings. I think it's kind of a hard word to say. But it's not that you're not complaining against that. You're complaining against God. They were right. They were right in doing so. They wanted the Israelites to recognize just how offensive this complaint against God was. Okay? Now, through the provision of food, God expected his people in verse 12 to know what? What does it say? Through this provision of manna and quail, God expected the people to know what? Very last phrase in verse 12. He's expecting the Israelites to know that I am taking care of your needs. I am Yahweh. I am the Lord your God. Okay? And as such, the Israelites should have responded in what way? With what? Thankfulness and humility. Thankfulness and humility. Rather, they have a need. They're very, very hungry. God provides for that need. They should have responded with humility and worship. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 8. Verse 2 and 3, And thou shalt remember all the ways which the Lord thy God led these 40 years in the wilderness to humble thee and to prove thee, to know what was in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keep his commandments or no. And he humbled thee, and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with manna, which thou knewest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he might make thee know the man doth not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of the Lord doth man live. So the Israelites here should have responded with humility and worship. Instead, of course, we know that they maintained their desire for God to serve them according to their wishes. Now, it's important for us to note here that God didn't just didn't just give them food. Manna is known as what? Bread from heaven, angel food, right? Would the manna have been bland tasting? Probably not. Okay, it's probably very filling, very delicious. Quail is known as a what? A bird of delicacy, right? Quail's not chicken. Quail's not even turkey. People who hunt quail and eat quail, the meat is very, very savory, right? It's very, 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 very good. It's like premium, top quality chicken. It's above and beyond what regular chicken breast is. It's very, very good and very, very, very tasty. As a matter of fact, if you go to a big fancy restaurant or whatever and order quail, it's usually very, very expensive, and it's usually very, 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 very good. Okay, now, eaten quail one time, and it was very, very good. It's just absolutely delicious. But if you kind of look up, quail is known throughout as being a delicacy. So he didn't just give them baloney here. It's kind of the point I'm trying to make, right? He didn't just give them sustenance enough to make their bellies full and to give them nutrients. He gave them quality stuff, right? He gave them the very, very best here when he gave them the manna and the quail. So they should, of course, have been overly thankful in responding with humility and worship. But, of course, we know that they did not do that. But we get down to verse 16, and after the solution God has provided with them, but you think about this, this is pretty cool, right? Wake up in the morning, and I don't have to worry about breakfast because I just walk outside and there's bread. And I worked or moved around all day or done whatever, and usually I holler in at about 4:30, 5 o'clock, how do we having for supper? But we wouldn't have to worry about it. We know that quail's there, right? We don't have to worry about getting anything ready, and we know that it's coming, which I think would be a pretty amazing thing. Think about how much time we spend during the day just thinking, preparing food, and then cleaning up afterwards, and how much time is spent during the day doing that. Quite a bit. They ain't got to worry about it. It's already taken care of for them. With the solution, though, God gives them some limitations, right? So he provides them with the food, but he gives them specific regulations with this food. And why do you think the reasoning for these limitations were? These guidelines God gave, why do you think he gave them these limitations with his food?
See if they could be obedient.
Exactly. This is just a pure test. He's just doing this to see if they could, in fact, obey. All right? Verses 16 down through verse 21, we see that the first part of this regulation, and we see Israel disobeying the regulation concerning leftovers. Verse 16, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which is in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. So the first regulation here is really simple, right? God forbade the Israelites to do what with the manna? Waste. Leave any left over, right? He forbade them to leave any of this manna left over and to leave it in their tents. Don't take more than you need, essentially, right? Don't have leftovers in the tent at night. If they did that, they took more than they needed, had leftovers, the manna would stink and fill with worms, okay? Acting here like toddlers who disobey really clear instructions. Pippa's at that age now that she's, she knows yes and no, and sometimes she doesn't want to do yes and no. She wants to do what Pippa's wants to do, and we're going through that right now. A lot of times, some direct instructions she just blatantly ignores. She has to get smacked on the hind end. We see the Israelites here the same way, blatantly disobeying direct orders from God. Some of the Israelites we see keeping the leftovers in their tents overnight. And of course, as we saw there in verse 20, notwithstanding they hearkened not unto Moses, some of them left of it into morning, and it bred worms and stank. So exactly what God said would happen, right? You keep too much, it's going to stink in your tents, and that's exactly what they did. They awoke to the rank smell here of this rotting, deteriorating manna. Verses 19 through 21, let's read it one more time. Moses said, let no man leave it till morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, as we saw. Stank with worms. Verse 21, and they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. Why would God want the Israelites to throw out their leftovers every evening? What lesson is he trying to teach them here? What's the reason that they can only take what they need and then not to keep any extra in the tent. Not to be selfish. Exactly, right? If when we have at the house and we make soup or something, we usually make a ton of it and we keep it and eat it 3 or 4 days, right? Because that's just how we don't know. Sometimes, the next meal, it's easier just to keep going and using until it's gone. They didn't have to worry about us worrying about leftovers or keeping those, is that we're saving them for later, right? Maybe the power goes out, or maybe, I don't have to cook the next couple days, whatever the case may be. God is wanting them to rely completely on Him for their provision. If they're keeping extra for tomorrow, maybe tomorrow's doesn't show up. Right? Does that make sense? If I got to have a little bit more, if I keep a little bit more each day, then maybe at some point this is going to stop. God is going to quit giving us this. He's not going to provide. God wants them to throw it out or not take more than they need to teach them that He is in fact going to provide for them the whole time, all of their needs, for the entirety of this trip. He wants them to have the daily bread provided for them from Him, and them to rely on that. Okay? They were to live according to His commands. He said it was going to happen. He told them not to take any more, and He wanted them to obey. The blatant disobedience here showed that Israel is in a power struggle with God for the control of the circumstances. It's just a pure old struggle for controlling of the circumstances. And even though God's over and over and over and over and over again here now provided for their needs, they're still wanting Him to do what they want and what they think is best for their own lives. They're wanting to bend God to their desires. Okay? So they test Him by collecting more of the manna than they're supposed to, more of the manna than He had commanded them to collect. And of course, we see the result of that. Verse 22 down to verse 30, we see them disobeying another of God's regulations. So let's go to verse 22. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread. Okay, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is that which the Lord hath said, Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and see that ye will see, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until morning. And they laid it up until morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worms therein. And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, How long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore He giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. So God's second regulation here seemed to violate the first one, right? He tells them not to gather and then keep any leftovers. So it appears to violate his first one. On the 6 days of the week, gather on the 6th day, gather twice as much. They've got something to eat on the Sabbath day. Now, not surprisingly here, we see that some of the Israelites got up on the Sabbath, and did they have anything to eat that day? They didn't, right? Obviously here, some of them went hungry on the Sabbath, because we see them going out into the fields on the Sabbath day to try to collect this manna, and it is not there, even though Moses told them that it would not be there. Okay? And again, they wanted God to serve them and conform to their desires. In doing so, what they didn't realize, or maybe they did realize and didn't care, that by disobeying Him the second time, they were essentially doing the opposite of what they had done the first time. A true testimony of the power-hungry hearts. They had done just the opposite of what they've been, just complete and total disobedience here on behalf of the Israelites. The Lord goes on here to ask Moses how long the people are going to refuse to keep his commandments and his laws, clearly indicating here that there is a serious heart problem going on within the Israelites. The people rebel against God by purposely disobeying his regulations. Okay, 28, verse 28, and the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Purposefully disobeying his regulations. Lack of communication here is not the problem. They know what to do. Moses told them specifically the instructions they're supposed to have. Hunger and thirst for power. Hunger and thirst for power is the problem here. Okay? Let's go to verse 31 down to verse 36, and we see God providing here a witness. Now, the provision of manna was I guess you would call a watershed moment for the Israelites, okay, in their relationship with God. Verse 31 down through verse 36, and the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed, white. And the taste of it was like made with honey. And Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, take a pot, and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to keep for your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna for 40 years, until they came to the land to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came into the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is a 10th part of an ephah. So God provides a witness here, telling them or showing them this manna, and it was a big deal for the Israelites, and it proved that God is going to care for their daily needs. So God gives instructions to Moses to gather some manna and keep it as a testimony of his faithfulness to Israel in the wilderness. Therefore, future generations are going to observe this manna and know that God is the provider of their needs. So Moses goes out, takes some manna, puts it in this pot, and then they kept it there, and that manna stayed good and stayed in that pot for however long it was there. And that was there for a witness to the future generations to see that God is in fact caring for their needs. One more test, and I'd like to get through it so we can finish up this lesson. This was a quick one. The test at Rephidim, we see in verses 1 through 7 of chapter 17. And let's move through this one quickly. As you see down south there of the wilderness of sin, they're at Rephidim now, and we see the next test that God gives them. Verses 1 through 7. So let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 7 so we can talk about the test, and we'll see that the complaint and then the solution provided for them. Now all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of sin after their journeys according to the commandments of the Lord, and pitched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses, and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said unto them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do you tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses, and said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and cattle with thirst? And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, what shall I do unto this people? They be almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said unto Moses, go on before the people, and take with thee of the elders of Israel, and thy rod wherewith thou smote the river, take in thine hand, and go. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because of the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? So we see again, next complaint here, there's people are thirsty again, right? And they're needing water again. And by now, at this point, you would expect the Israelites to just kind of humbly accept the fact that God is going to take care of them and submit to them. After all, every day they walk out and there's bread and meat there for them. It's happening every day. But we see God testing them one more time to see just exactly what reveals in their hearts. Verses 1 through 4, in the wilderness there of sin, down to Rephidim, where they didn't find anything to drink. Now, this was different from the first test where there was actually water present. They just weren't able to drink it. Now there's no water there at all, okay? What evidence here is there that the Israelites actually trusted God less at Rephidim than they did previously? Where do we see that? What threats here are they making to Moses? They're going to kill him, right? I mean, they're going to kill him. So we see them actually trusting God less at this point because they're there. Why'd you bring us out of Egypt? Same old complaint they always have, to the point that they're going to kill him because they don't have any water. They just got done eating breakfast. This one blows my mind, right? They just got done eating breakfast that God provided for them. And they're out there complaining and ready to kill Moses because they don't have any water. The people's complaint here, Rephidim provided the third witness about the conditions of their heart. There's no doubt that they are proud and are demanding rather than being humble and grateful. So we see this great power struggle again. God provides the solution. We saw there in verses 5, 6, and 7. He told Moses to take the rod he used to turn the Nile into blood and to strike the rock, do it in front of the elders. And God caused the water to flow from the rock so that Israel could quench their thirst. The last statement here, verse 7, is pretty telling of the people of Israel. The very last statement here. They tempted the Lord, saying, what? What did the Israelites say? Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Right, this is where they're at. Right, this is the state of their heart. God is providing for them every day, and they actually are asking, is he really even here? Hey guys, hey guys, where'd the bread come from? Hey guys, where's the quail coming from? Right, but that's not what we're getting here. It's more of a, what have you done for me lately? Right? Why hasn't God? This is not what I want to happen. So God should be doing what I want to happen in my life. They're questioning the very presence of God amidst them. The Israelites again revealed they expect God to serve them according to their expectation. They keep facing needs. They wonder if God is actually with them at all. He provides for them in some way, shows them that they are there. And then again, the next need comes up. They do the exact same thing over and over and over again. They're expecting God to provide for their needs instantly and according to their liking. I should have learned that this expectation from watching the Egyptians interact with their gods, right? I've been watching the Egyptians pray to Ra and the Nile River god for years, and it taking, what appears to be never happening. The Egyptians conducted themselves in such a way as to try to control and coerce their gods in order to have a comfortable, easy life. Of course, we know God can't be controlled or coerced. 3 tests here that we see reveals Israel's lack of humility before him. They're fighting God for control in their life. Let's try. Can you move that slide for me, Pastor Rob, if you can? Just give it a click, maybe. I'd like to get to the next one. Thank you. Perfect. All right, so we see Israel's growing dissatisfaction here, right? Based on the track record of Israel's in the wilderness here, would we say that they deserve to be delivered from Egypt? Based on the track record, the last 3 things we've seen here, did they deserve to be rescued from Egypt? No. Okay, probably not. Why would God deliver such a rebellious, hard-hearted, doubtful, demanding, power-hungry people from slavery? Why would he do that? Why did he do that? Exactly, right? Because he's faithful. Because God is faithful to his promise. Because he loves humanity and, of course, is going to one day provide for humanity's salvation through the descendant of Israel. So we see growing dissatisfaction. Mara, bad water, what shall we drink? In the wilderness of sin, no food. Oh, we should have died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, where we had food to eat. Rephidim, no water. Why did God bring us here? Is he even with us at all in any way? So we see this growing dissatisfaction with him. God established that Israel was rebellious and power hungry. his next stop here in leading the people is where? Where are we headed next? Do you know? In the middle of chapter 17 into verse 18, or chapter 18, we're heading to Mount Sinai. So he's revealed he's exposed their hearts. Now he's taken them to Mount Sinai, the place he is going to continue to reveal himself to his people by illustrating his holiness and then giving them what? What happens at Mount Sinai? The Ten Commandments, right? He's going to give them the Ten Commandments, the laws that they are to follow, to obey, and that is where we'll head next week. Lesson 6, I am the provider. I guess it jumps over, not quite 7, it's 19 I think we get to, is I am the instructor. He's going to give them the Ten Commandments. As we continue to move here with the Israelites into the wilderness. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the lesson that we had this morning. Thank you for the examples that are given to us through the unsatisfactory display that the Israelites have when you provide for them, when you're faithful to them, and how they're continuing to want you to bend to their will and to their ways. If nothing else, if we can see these affairs and see these mistakes, Lord, if nothing else, it should be a reminder to us to remember that ain't nothing we can do about it. Situations that we're in, you're in control of. We need to give it to you. We can try to fix it, and it's not going to work. It's important for us to remember that you are, in fact, in control. And that we should turn our desires, our wants, our needs, Lord, over to you. It's hard at times, but we need to do that. I want to pray for Pastor Rob as he comes here in the next little bit as well. Just use him, Lord, for the message today. Keep us